Chapters 12 through 14 of The Devil's Pool. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Devil's Pool by George Sand. Translated by George B. Ives. Chapter 12. The Village Lioness. However, when he had repaired the disorder of travel in his clothes and his horse's accoutrements, when he was mounted upon Grise and had ascertained the road to Fourche, he reflected that there was no drawing back, and that he must forget that night of excitement as a dangerous dream. He found Père Léonard in the doorway of his white house, sitting on a pretty wooden bench painted spinach green. There were 6 stone steps leading to the front door, showing that the house had a cellar. The wall between the garden and hemp field was rough cast with lime and pebbles. It was an attractive place. One might almost have taken it for the abode of a substantial bourgeois. Germain's prospective father-in-law came to meet him, and after 5 minutes spent in questioning him concerning his whole family, he added this phrase, invariably used to question courteously those whom one meets as to the object of their journey. "So you have come out this way for a little ride, eh?" "I came to see you," replied the ploughman, "and to offer you this little gift of game from my father-in-law, and to say, also from him, that you would know my purpose in coming." "Ha, ha!" laughed Père Léonard, patting his round paunch. "I see, I hear, I understood." And he added, with a wink, "You'll not be alone in paying your respects, my young friend. There are 3 in the house already, dancing attendance like you. I don't turn anybody away, and I should be hard put to it to decide against any one of them, for they're all good matches. However, on account of Père Maurice and the quality of your lands, I should prefer you, but my daughter's of age and mistress of her own property, so she will do as she pleases. Go in and introduce yourself. I hope you may draw the lucky number." "Pardon, excuse me," replied Germain, greatly surprised to find himself one of several, where he had expected to be alone. "I didn't know that your daughter was already provided with suitors, and I didn't come to dispute for her with others." "If you thought that because you were slow in coming," retorted Père Léonard, with undiminished good humor, "you would catch my daughter napping, you have made a very great mistake, my boy. Catherine has something to attract husbands with, and she'll only have too many to choose from. But go into the house, I tell you, and don't lose courage. She's a woman worth disputing for." And pushing Germain by the shoulders with rough good humor, "Here, Catherine," he cried, entering the house, "here's one more." This jovial but vulgar manner of being introduced to the widow in the presence of her other suitors put the finishing touch to the ploughman's confusion and annoyance. He felt ill at ease, and stood for some moments without venturing to turn his eyes on the fair one and her court. The widow Guérin was well made, and did not lack freshness, but the expression of her face and her costume repelled Germain at the first glance. She had a forward, self-sustained air, and her mob cap trimmed with a triple row of lace, her silk apron, and her black lace fichu were decidedly not in harmony with the idea he had conceived of a sedate, serious-minded widow. This elegance in dress and her free and easy manners made her appear old and ugly to him, although she was neither. He thought that such coquettish attire and playful manners would be well suited to the age and keen wit of little Marie, but that such pleasantry on the widow's part was heavy and stale, and that there was no distinction in the way she wore her fine clothes. The 3 suitors were sitting at a table laden with food and wine, which were kept there for them through the whole of Sunday morning, for Père Léonard loved to exhibit his opulence, nor was the widow sorry to display her fine plate and to keep open house like a woman of means. Germain, simple and trustful as he was, did not lack penetration in his observation of things, and for the first time in his life he stood on the defensive while drinking. Père Léonard had compelled him to take a seat with his rivals, and seating himself opposite him, he treated him as handsomely as possible, and devoted himself to him with evident partiality. The gift of game, despite the breach Germain had made in it on his own account, was still considerable enough to produce an effect. The widow seemed to appreciate it, and the suitors eyed it disdainfully. Germain felt ill at ease in that company, and did not eat with any heartiness. Père Léonard rallied him about it. "You seem very down in the mouth," he said, "and you're sulking with your glass. You mustn't let love spoil your appetite, for a fasting lover can't find so many pretty things to say as the man who has sharpened up his wits with a mouthful of wine." Germain was mortified that it should be assumed that he was in love, and the affected demeanor of the widow, who lowered her eyes with a smile, like one who is sure of her game, made him long to protest against his alleged surrender, but he feared to seem discourteous, so he smiled and took patience. The widow's lovers seemed to him like three rustic clowns. They must have been rich, or she would not have listened to their suits. One of them was more than 40, and was about as stout as Père Léonard. Another had but one eye, and drank so much that it made him stupid. The third was young and not a bad-looking fellow, but he attempted to be witty, and said such insane things that one could but pity him. But the widow laughed as if she admired all his idiotic remarks, and therein she gave no proof of good taste. Germain thought at first that she was in love with the young man, but he soon perceived that he was himself the recipient of marked encouragement, and that she wished him to yield more readily to her charms. That was to him a reason for feeling and appearing even colder and more solemn. The hour of mass arrived, and they left the table to attend in a body. They had to go to Mers, a good half-league away, and Germain was so tired that he would have been glad of an opportunity to take a nap first, but he was not in the habit of being absent from mass, and he started with the others. The roads were filled with people, and the widow walked proudly along, escorted by her 3 suitors, taking the arm of one, then of another, bridling up and carrying her head high. She would have been very glad to exhibit the 4th to the passers-by, but it seemed so ridiculous to be paraded thus in company by a petticoat in everybody's sight that he kept at a respectable distance, talking with Père Léonard, and finding a way to divert his thoughts and occupy his mind so that they did not seem to belong to the party. Chapter 13. The Master. When they reached the village, the widow stopped to wait for them. She was determined to make her entry with her whole suite, but Germain, refusing to afford her that satisfaction, left Père Léonard, spoke with several people of his acquaintance, and entered the church by another door. The widow was vexed with him. After the mass, she made her appearance in triumph on the greensward where dancing was in progress, and opened 3 successive dances with her 3 lovers. Germain watched her, and concluded that she danced well, but with affectation. "Well," said Léonard, clapping him on the shoulder, "so you don't ask my daughter to dance? You are altogether too bashful." "I don't dance since I lost my wife," the ploughman replied. "Oh, but when you're looking for another, mourning's at an end in your heart as well as in your clothes." "That's no argument, Père Léonard. Besides, I feel too old. I don't care for dancing any more." "Hark ye," rejoined Léonard, leading him apart. "You took offence when you entered my house because you found the citadel already surrounded by besiegers, and I see that you're very proud, but that isn't reasonable, my boy. My daughter's used to being courted, especially these last 2 years since her mourning came to an end, and it isn't her place to make advances to you." "Your daughter has been free to marry again for 2 years, you say, and hasn't made up her mind yet?" said Germain. "She doesn't choose to hurry, and she's right, although she has rather a lively way with her, and you may think she doesn't reflect much. She's a woman of great good sense, and one who knows very well what she's about." "I don't see how that can be," said Germain ingeniously, "for she has 3 gallants in her train, and if she knew what she wanted, at least 2 of them would seem to her to be in the way, and she would request them to stay at home." "Why so? You don't know anything about it, Germain. She doesn't want either the old man, or the one-eyed one, or the young one. I'm almost certain of it. But if she should turn them away, people would say she's meant to remain a widow, and no others would come." "Ah, yes, they act as a signpost for her." "As you say. Where's the harm, if they like it?" "Every one to his taste," said Germain. "That wouldn't be to your taste, I see. But come now, we can come to an understanding. Supposing that she prefers you, the field could be left clear for you." "Yes, supposing. And how long must I stand with my nose in the air before I can find out?" "That depends on yourself, I fancy, if you know how to talk and argue." "So far, my daughter has understood very clearly that the best part of her life would be the part that she passed in letting men court her, and she doesn't feel in any hurry to become one man's servant when she can give orders to several. And so, as long as the game pleases her, she can divert herself with it. But if you please her more than the game may be stopped. All you have to do is not to be discouraged. Come every Sunday, ask her to dance, give her to understand that you're on the list, and if she finds you more likable and better informed than the others, I don't doubt that she'll tell you so some fine day. Excuse me, Père Léonard, your daughter is entitled to act as she pleases, and I have no right to blame her. I would act differently if I were in her place. I'd be more honest, and I wouldn't let men throw away their time who probably have something better to do than hang around a woman who laughs at them. But, after all, if that entertains her and makes her happy, it's none of my business. But I must tell you one thing that is a little embarrassing for me to confess since this morning, seeing that you began by making a mistake as to my intentions and didn't give me any time to reply, so that you believe something that isn't so. Pray understand that I didn't come here to ask for your daughter's hand, but to buy a pair of oxen that you intend to take to the fair next week, and that my father-in-law thinks will suit him." "I understand, Germain," said Léonard calmly. "You changed your mind when you saw my daughter with her lovers. That's as you please. It seems that what attracts one repels another, and you have the right to withdraw as long as you haven't spoken yet. If you really want to buy my oxen, come and look at them in the pasture. We'll talk it over, and whether we strike a bargain or not, you'll come and take dinner with us before you go back." "I don't want you to put yourself out," replied Germain. "Perhaps you have business here. I'm a little tired of watching them dance and of doing nothing. I'll go to look at your cattle, and join you later at your house." Thereupon Germain slipped away and walked towards the meadows, where Léonard had pointed out some of his beasts in the distance. It was true that Père Maurice wanted to buy, and Germain thought that if he should take back a good yoke at a moderate price, he would be pardoned more readily for having voluntarily failed to accomplish the real object of his journey. He walked fast, and was soon within a short distance of Ormeaux. Thereupon he felt that he must go and kiss his son and see little Marie once more, although he had lost the hope and banished from his mind the thought of owing his happiness to her. All that he had seen and heard, the vain, giddy woman, the father, at once cunning and shallow, who encouraged his daughter in her pride and disingenuous habits, the imitation of city luxury, which seemed to him an offence against the dignity of country manners, the time wasted in indolent, foolish conversation, that household so different from his own, and, above all, the profound discomfort that the husbandman feels when he lays aside his laborious habits, all the ennui and annoyance he had undergone within the last few hours, made Germain long to be once more with his child and his little neighbor. Even if he had not been in love with the latter, he would have sought her none the less for distraction, and to restore his mind to its accustomed channels. But he looked in vain in the neighboring fields. He saw neither little Marie nor little Pierre, and yet it was the time when the shepherds are in the fields. There was a large flock in a pasture. He asked a young boy who was tending them if the sheep belonged to the farm of Ormeaux. "Yes," said the child. "Are you the shepherd? Do boys tend woolly beasts for the farmers in your neighborhood?" "No, I'm tending 'em to-day because the shepherdess has gone away. She was sick." "But haven't you a new shepherdess who came this morning?" "Oh, yes, she's gone too already." "What, gone? Didn't she have a child with her?" "Yes, a little boy," he cried. "They both went away after they'd been here 2 hours." "Where did they go?" "Where they came from, I suppose. I didn't ask 'em." "But what did they go away for?" said Germain with increasing anxiety. "Why, how do I know? Didn't they agree about wages? But that must have been agreed on beforehand." "I can't tell you anything about it. I saw them go in and come out, that's all." Germain went on to the farm and questioned the farm hands. No one could explain what had happened, but all agreed that, after talking with the farmer, the girl had gone away without saying a word, taking with her the child, who was weeping. "Did they ill-treat my son?" cried Germain, his eyes flashing fire. "He was your son, was he? How did he come to be with that girl? Where are you from, and what's your name?" Germain, seeing that his questions were answered by other questions, according to the custom of the country, stamped his foot impatiently and asked to speak with the master. The master was not there. He was not in the habit of staying the whole day when he came to the farm. he had mounted his horse and ridden off to some other of his farms. "But surely you can find out the reason of that young girl's going away," said Germain, assailed by keen anxiety. The farm hand exchanged a strange smile with his wife, then replied that he knew nothing about it, that it did not concern him. All that Germain could learn was that the girl and the child had gone in the direction of Fourche. He hurried to Fourche. The widow and her lovers had not returned, nor had Père Léonard. The servant told him that a young girl and a child had come there and inquired for him, but that she, not knowing them, thought it best not to admit them, and advised them to go to Mers. "Why did you refuse to let them in?" said Germain angrily. "Are you so suspicious in these parts that you don't open your door to your neighbor?" "Oh, bless me!" the servant replied. "In a rich house like this one has to keep a sharp lookout. I am responsible for everything when the masters are away, and I can't open the door to everybody that comes." "That's a vile custom," said Germain, "and I'd rather be poor than live in fear like that. Adieu, girl, adieu to your wretched country." He inquired at the neighboring houses. Everybody had seen the shepherdess and the child. As the little one had left Belair unexpectedly, without being dressed for the occasion, with a torn blouse and his little lamb's fleece over his shoulders, and as little Marie was necessarily very shabbily dressed at all times, they had been taken for beggars. Some one had offered them bread. The girl had accepted a piece for the child, who was hungry. Then she had walked away very fast with him, and had gone into the woods. Germain reflected for a moment, then asked if the farmer from Ormeaux had not come to Fourche. "Yes," was the reply. "He rode by on horseback a few minutes after the girl." "Did he ride after her?" "Ah, you know him, do you?" laughed the village innkeeper, to whom he had applied for information. "Yes, to be sure, he's a devil of a fellow for running after the girls, but I don't believe he caught that one, although, after all, if he had seen her—" "That's enough, thanks." And he flew rather than ran to Léonard's stable. He threw the saddle on Grise's back, leaped upon her, and galloped away in the direction of the woods of Chanteloube. His heart was beating fast with anxiety and wrath. The perspiration rolled down his forehead. He covered Grise's side with blood, although the mare, when she found that she was on the way to her stable, did not need to be urged to go at full speed. Chapter 14. The Old Woman. Germain soon found himself at the spot on the edge of the pool where he had passed the night. The fire was still smoking. An old woman was picking up what was left of the dead wood Marie had collected. Germain stopped to question her. She was deaf and misunderstood his questions. "Yes, my boy," she said, "this is the Devil's Pool. It's a bad place, and you mustn't come near it without throwing 3 stones in with your left hand and crossing yourself with your right. That drives away the spirits. Unless they do that, misfortune comes to those who walk around it." "I didn't ask you about that," said Germain, drawing nearer to her and shouting at the top of his voice. "Haven't you seen a girl and a young child going through the woods?" "Yes," said the old woman. "There was a small child drowned there." Germain shivered from head to foot, but luckily the old woman added, "That was a long, long while ago. They put up a beautiful cross, but on a fine stormy night the evil spirits threw it into the water. You can still see one end of it. If any one had the bad luck to stop here at night, he would be very sure not to be able to go away before dawn. It would do him no good to walk. He might travel 200 leagues through the woods, and find himself still in the same place." The ploughman's imagination was impressed, do what he would, by what he heard, and the idea of the misfortune which might follow, to justify the remainder of the old woman's assertions, took such complete possession of his brain that he felt cold all over his body. Despairing of obtaining any additional information, he mounted his horse and began to ride through the woods, calling Pierre at the top of his voice, whistling, cracking his whip, breaking off branches to fill the forest with the noise of his progress, then listening to see if any voice answered. But he heard naught but the bells on the cows scattered among the bushes, and the fierce grunting of pigs fighting over the acorns. At last Germain heard behind him the footsteps of a horse following in his track, and a man of middle age, swarthy, robust, dressed like a semi-bourgeois, shouted to him to stop. Germain had never seen the farmer of Ormeaux, but an angry instinct led him to determine at once that it was he. He turned, and eyeing him from head to foot, waited to hear what he had to say to him. "Haven't you seen a young girl of 15 or 16 with a little boy pass this way?" said the farmer, affecting an indifferent manner, though he was visibly moved. "What do you want of her?" demanded Germain, not seeking to disguise his indignation. "I might tell you that that was none of your business, my friend, but as I have no reason to hide it, I will tell you that she's a shepherdess I hired for the year without knowing her. When she came to the farm, she seemed to me too young and not strong enough for the work. I thanked her, but I insisted on paying her what her little journey had cost, and she went off in a rage while my back was turned. She was in such a hurry that she even forgot part of her things, and her purse, which hasn't very much in it, to be sure, a few sous, I suppose. But as I had business in this direction, I thought I might meet her and give her what she forgot and what I owe her." Germain was too honest a soul not to hesitate when he heard that story, which was possible, at least, if not very probable. He fixed a piercing gaze on the farmer, who bore his scrutiny with much impudence, or else with perfect innocence. "I want to have a clear conscience," said Germain to himself, and restraining his indignation, he continued aloud. "She's a girl from our neighborhood. I know her. She must be somewhere about here. Let us go on together. We shall find her, I've no doubt." "You are right," said the farmer. "Let's go on. But if we don't find her at the end of the path, I give it up, for I must take the Ardentes road." "Oh ho!" thought the ploughman, "I won't leave you, even if I should have to twist around the Devil's Pool with you for 24 hours." "Stay!" said Germain suddenly, fixing his eyes on a clump of furze which was moving back and forth in a peculiar way. "Hola, hola! Petit Pierre, my child, is that you?" The child, recognizing his father's voice, leaped out of the bushes like a kid, but when he saw that he was with the farmer, he stopped as if in terror, and stood still, uncertain what to do. "Come, my Pierre, come, it's me!" cried the ploughman, riding toward him and leaping down from his horse to take him in his arms. "And where's little Marie?" "She's hiding there, because she's afraid of that bad black man, and so am I." "Oh, don't you be afraid, I am here. Marie, Marie, it is me!" Marie came crawling out from the bushes, and as soon as she saw Germain, whom the farmer was following close, she ran and threw herself into his arms, and clinging to him like a daughter to her father, she exclaimed, "Ah, my good Germain, you will defend me. I'm not afraid with you." Germain shuddered. He looked at Marie. She was pale. Her clothes were torn by the brambles through which she had run, seeking the thickest underbrush, like a doe with the hunters on her track. But there was neither despair nor shame on her face. "Your master wants to speak to you," he said, still watching her features. "My master?" she said proudly. "That man is not my master, and never will be. You are my master, you, Germain. I want you to take me back with you. We'll work for you for nothing." The farmer had ridden forward, feigning some impatience. "Ah, little one," he said, "you forgot something which I have brought you." "No, no, monsieur," replied little Marie, "I didn't forget anything, and there's nothing I want to ask you for." "Hark ye a minute," said the farmer. "I have something to say to you. Come, don't be afraid, just 2 words." "You can say them out loud. I have no secrets with you." "Come and get your money, at least." "My money? You don't owe me anything, thank God." "I suspected as much," said Germain in an undertone. "But never mind, Marie. Listen to what he has to say to you, for my part, I am curious to find out. You can tell me afterward. I have my reasons for that. Go beside his horse. I won't lose sight of you." Marie took 3 steps toward the farmer, who said to her, leaning forward on the pommel of his saddle, and lowering his voice, "Here's a bright louis d'or for you, little one. You won't say anything, understand? I'll say that I concluded you weren't strong enough for the work on my farm, and don't let anything more be said about it. I'll come and see you again one of these days, and if you haven't said anything, I'll give you something else. And then, if you're more reasonable, you'll only have to say the word. I will take you home with me, or else come and talk with you in the pasture at dusk. What present shall I bring you?" "There is my gift to you, monsieur," replied little Marie aloud, throwing his louis d'or in his face with no gentle hand. "I thank you very much, and I beg you to let me know beforehand when you are coming our way. All the young men in my neighborhood will turn out to receive you, because our people are very fond of bourgeois who try to make love to poor girls. You'll see, they'll be on the lookout for you." "You're a liar and a silly babbler," said the farmer in a rage, raising his stick threateningly. "You'd like to make people believe what isn't true, but you won't get any money out of me. I know your kind." Marie had recoiled in terror, but Germain darted to the farmer's horse's head, seized the rein, and shook it vigorously. "I understand now," he said, "and I see plainly enough what the trouble was. Dismount, my man. Come down and let us have a talk." The farmer was by no means anxious to take a hand in the game. He spurred his horse in order to free himself, and tried to strike the ploughman's hand with his stick and make him relax his hold, but Germain eluded the blow, and taking him by the leg unhorsed him and brought him to the heather, where he knocked him down, although the farmer was soon upon his feet again and defended himself sturdily. "Coward!" said Germain when he had him beneath him. "I could break every bone in your body if I chose, but I don't like to harm anybody, and besides, no punishment would mend your conscience. However, you shan't stir from this spot until you have asked this girl's pardon on your knees." The farmer, who was familiar with affairs of that sort, tried to turn it off as a joke. He claimed that his offence was not so very serious, as it consisted only in words, and said that he was willing to beg the girl's pardon, on condition that he might kiss her and that they should all go and drink a pint of wine at the nearest inn and part good friends. "You disgust me," replied Germain, pressing his face against the ground, "and I long to see the last of your ugly face. There, blush if you can, and you had better take the road of the affronteux when you come to our town." He picked up the farmer's holly staff, broke it across his knee to show the strength of his wrists, and threw the pieces away with a contemptuous gesture. Then taking his son's hand in one of his, and little Marie's in the other, he walked away, trembling with indignation. End of chapters 12 through 14 of The Devil's Pool.